Hello friends of mountain bike skills. Welcome to episode 2 of the Nitty Gritty. We're looking at the bunny hop and we're looking at what makes the difference between bunny hopping a 29-inch hardtail and a 24-inch trials bike. How do you need to adjust the skill? That's what we're looking at today. Let's get going. All right friends, so this is a video of Patrick, who has been working with my bunny hop course and who has been making amazing progress. And that's why I want to share it with you, because it is amazing how he's bunny hopping. If you've seen my last video, which I'm going to be linking below, then you already know. But today we're looking at what's the difference between a 29-inch hardtail and a trials bike. Because yes, you need to adjust your skills according to the bike you're on. So if we look at the opening move of the bunny hop, which is usually a load. If you're on a full suspension bike, you can see here that on the hardtail, it's a very crisp load, and he's moving his body a little more forward than he would on his full suspension. So if you watched my last episode, you'll know that. Here on the trials bike, it's actually even larger, the movement. You can see that he's moving even farther forward than he is on his hardtail bike for the first part, which is the load or the preparation for the jump. Then he's pushing the handlebar forward, which lifts the front wheel. And this is a mini manual, because actually the manual motion stops right now. This is, let me just see, this is where it's still a manual, and this is where it's not a manual anymore, because if you look at his hips, they're already moving up. So this is already the next phase of the move. You can also see that his arms are bending, so it's not a manual anymore. And if we look at this with the trials bike, you can actually see that it's very similar. This is where the manual stops, so it's about, I'd say about 15 centimeters high, which is about 4.5 inches, and then he starts with the next part of the motion, which is the pulling of the handlebar towards the thighs and the springing up motion with the hips. So now what's the difference here between the hardtail on the right and the trials bike on the left? You can see that he needs to bend the arms much more than he does with the hardtail. So you can see on the right, his arms are not bent as much as they would be as they are on the left, because the bike is much smaller. So he needs to bend the arms much more, otherwise he'd loop out. And that's also interesting, because most people, when they're focusing on getting a super high manual here, then during this phase, which is super important, pulling the handlebar, they just loop out. So they fall rearwards because the manual initiation was too high. And that's important to know, because you need a small manual, and then you need to launch upwards by bringing your hips upwards and pulling the handlebar towards your thighs. And that's also important, because if we now look at the manual initiation, you'll see on the right, look where his hips are, and on the left, look where his hips are here. Can you see that on the right, he's way behind his rear axle, and on the left, he's much higher with his hips, and also he's not rearwards as far, because then again he would loop out. So the range of motion you need on a trials bike is much smaller than you need on a 29-inch hardtail, and that's why it's actually harder for shorter riders to perform moves on a 29-inch bike, because they need more range of motion, and of course shorter riders don't have as much range of motion, which is why it's so impressive how Patrick has trained himself to do this. It has required a lot of practice and a lot of strength, so big props to Patrick here. That's the first difference here, that the hips don't need to move as far, less range of motion, and here then the arms will be pulling earlier and more to lift the front wheel. Now the next phase is pulling the handlebar to the thighs and launching up. Very similar on both. You can see slight differences because where the bike is, but the overall motion is the same. And then he's pulling the handlebar up, pushing the bike forward, which keeps the pedals on his feet and which lifts the rear wheel. And now this is super interesting because look at the height of his hop on the left. Can you see how high he's hopping here? So how much clearance there is between the ledge and his rear wheel, and how little there is on the right side. So the hop is much higher with his trials bike than it is with his 29-inch bike. It makes sense because where is he going to tuck that 29-inch wheel? He's a short guy, his hips are at a limited height, they're at the same height left and right, but since this on the left is a 24-inch bike and on the right it's a 29-inch bike, he can't tuck it as much on the right, which means he can't lift it as high, and that's why the type of bike you're riding and the wheel size will of course also limit your maximum hoppable height, as well as your body size, the length of your legs, your weight, your quick strength. All these things will limit your overall bunny hop height. So of course a woman will never be able to bunny hop as high as a man, and a rider like Patrick, who's 5'6", which is 167, will never be able to bunny hop as high as a 2-meter tall guy, which I don't know how much that is in feet. I'm just going to write it here. And that's always important to keep in mind as a coach, but also when you're practicing, when you're training, not to compare yourself with people who have longer limbs, have more quick strength, have a different background, because we're all different. So look for a coach who will find cues that work for you, but don't compare yourself with people that are totally different. Okay, that's super interesting, as I said, that he's higher. And then if we now look at the landing, again, he needs to extend the legs more on the left because he was able to tuck the bike further in. And then he's landing, again, not as far rearwards as he is on the right side. On the right side, he really needs to almost touch the rear tire with his crotch there. So it's butt buzzing also during the landing. And on the left, he has much more room there to land nice and smoothly through the legs. So it's much easier on a trials bike than it is on a 29-inch hardtail, but he's doing an amazing job. So great job, Patrick. I'm so stoked to see your progress. If you would like to see this progress in yourself, then you can either work with what you've seen in this video or you just follow my proven drills, because it's exactly what I share with my one-on-one clients. It's just much cheaper and much easier to access because you can just practice the drills in front of your house, so on your doorstep. And you'll find those links here and of course also below this video. I hope you liked this video. Share with me which other skills you would like me to address in my nitty-gritty series. Just comment below, give me the thumb up, do subscribe to my channel, share it with someone who's struggling with the bunny hop. And I also have a podcast which you can find here. I have a free track stand course which is right here. And if you have any further questions, then just comment below. Goodbye.